Hey, how are you doing? This is ChronoABI, and in this video we're gonna make this enemy right here. Which enemy right here? This enemy right here. And we are going to do it with bolt visual scripting. This enemy basically follows the player around, stops at a certain distance and starts shooting bullet. And with that said, let's get on with the video. By the way, special thanks to Good Hoagland for supporting this channel on Patreon. Bro, I hope I didn't butcher your name, but your support means a lot to me. Thank you so much. With that said, let's get on with the video. So this is a simple scene in which we have a player that, because of this script, just goes up, down, left and right whenever I press the up, down, left and right button. And we have an enemy which has shoot position. This is from where we will shoot our bullet. So now let's start by setting up the flow macro of our enemy. So add a new flow macro here and I'll call it flying enemy AI. Now in here, to make our enemy move towards the player, we need something called a vector2.moveTowards. So in the update, just drag this out and write vector2.moveTowards and click on this. Now we have three different values here. The first one is called current position, which is the enemy's position, the target position, which you can say is the player's position, and max distance delta, which is how fast do you go from your own position to the player's position, which is the speed value. So we want to go from our position to the player's position with some amount of speed. For that, let's have a reference to our player first of all. So in the variable section, write player, and let's make it a game object. But we will not drag and drop the player here. The reason why is that we will have to make a prefab out of this enemy like this, and when we make a prefab out of it, you cannot drag and drop the value here. Meaning the player's value is not saved, and because of that, every time I drag and drop this guy into the scene, I'll have to manually put the value here. See, I'll put another one and again, so which is really tedious. So instead of doing that, go to the start function and then we'll find our player with the help of its tag. So for that, go to the player and in the tag section, put it as a player tag. Now back here, what we will do is in the start, write game object dot find, and you will see find name, find with tag. We want game object, find game object with tag, and in the tag section write player. Write it exactly like this, which means now we'll find a game object player. Then we will put this value inside our player variable. So write player here and we'll bring out the set variable of our player and then put this here. Now we have our reference to the player, which will be set automatically. Now after that, what we need to do is we need to put our position here and put the player's position here and then put the speed value. So for that, first of all, let me just put a speed value. Speed, which will be a float, and let's put 5 here. Now for the current position, just click here and write transform.position. Transform.position. For the player's position, meaning the target position, bring out the player, then just make a duplicate of this, put that value here. So now we are getting the position of our player and then we'll put that value here. It says something is wrong because it is not finding anything here, but when we start the game, it will automatically find the player and then put the position value here. For the speed, let me just bring out my speed and then I will multiply this value with something called time.delta time so that our speed will be consistent everywhere. So just multiply this value with that and then put this value here. So now essentially we have a system which will help this enemy move towards the player. So now after doing that, what we need to do is we need to put this inside our enemy's transform so that this transform will change and we will start moving towards the player. So here, let's bring out the transform.position. transform.position, which would be a set value, and here just put in this value, and essentially now we have a system which makes the enemy move towards the player. And as you can see, it moves towards the player. Whenever I move the player, the enemy also moves accordingly. So let's make a super unit out of it. I will call this super unit move towards player, and then select all of this and then put it inside here. So in the input section, in the control input, click plus to bring out a input. Now to see the input flow, in the key just press 1 space and hit enter. You'll see a key, and then drag and drop it here. After that, in the output, do the same thing. So control output plus, but here we need 2 spaces, and hit enter, and you will see a control output. Then put this here. Once we do that, let's go back to our flying enemy, and we have our move towards player function. Now let's make the enemy move towards the player only when the player is inside its line of sight. Meaning, for that, let's just make a line of sight value, which will be a float. And I will not set it up right now. So to see that line of sight, let's just here write on draw gizmo selected. And to see the color of that gizmo, write gizmos.color. So let's make it a bright green. And now to see the circle, write gizmos.drawWireSphere. Gizmos.drawWireSphere. So it takes a center value, meaning the transform.position. We're going to give our own position here, and also a radius value, which will be our line of sight. So let me just give it a little bit of space. Now for the center, we just need its position, meaning the transform.position. Self means the same self game object. And for the radius, just drag and drop this guy here and connect it here. Once I put this value as something bigger than 0, you will see a circle here. So let's put 9 here, and as you can see, now there is a circle. Now whenever the player is inside this area, only then the enemy will move towards the player. So for that to happen, what we need is, first of all, we need a distance from our player, meaning we need to calculate the distance from our player. Luckily, there is something called vector2.distance. This just calculates the distance between 2 positions. For us, it will be the enemy's position and the player position. So for the enemy's position, write transform.position. And for the player's position, just make a duplicate of this position and then bring out the player. So player's transform.position. So now we will compare this position value with our line of sight. So let's bring out this line of sight. And if this value is less than our line of sight, meaning essentially we are inside the line of sight area, then our enemy will start following the player. So to compare them, what I need to do is just go here and just find the less or equal, right? And just connect both of them. And then this is a true or false value, a Boolean value. So I need something called a branch. So this will work like an if-else statement. So let me just bring this a little bit in front and connect this here. So what's going to happen is we will basically take the distance from our enemy and the player, then compare that distance with our line of sight. If this is actually lower than the line of sight, meaning we are inside the range, and if that is true, then only then we will move towards the player. Now after doing this, what's going to happen? Let me just hit play, and it's not moving towards the player because we are outside the line of sight. Now if I go inside, it will start moving towards the player. The moment I go outside, it stops. This is also done. Now what I also want to do is, let's go up here, make a duplicate of this as well as duplicate of this, so that will give another color to that gizmo. So it will be an orange. So connect this orange color here. Then here, what I want to do is basically make a duplicate of this so that we'll create a circle on our enemy. And for the radius, we will find another value called shooting range. It will be a float, and let's put a value like 4. After that, let me just bring this out and then connect it here. So this will be our shooting range, meaning what will happen is I want the enemy to basically follow the player only when the player is inside this area. But when the player is inside this area, I don't want the enemy to follow the player anymore. So to do that, what we need to do is basically we just need to make a duplicate of this. So let me just organize it first of all. So let's just make a duplicate of this. So select all of these, make a duplicate of it, just bring it down here. So for this one, instead of our line of sight, we will compare our distance from the player with our shooting range. So let me just bring this out. And instead of saying less than, we want greater or equal to. So let me just remove this and find greater or equal to and put it here, then put it here. And then for now, just follow along. So let me just bring it about here, and this guy just bring it about here, and then we will go from here, the truth here to here, and then only here. You just followed along. So what's gonna happen is, so first of all we will find the distance from the player and then compare that distance from the player to our line of sight. And whenever that value is lower, meaning the distance from player is lower than the line of sight, meaning we're inside the line of sight, then we will move towards the player, right? But also one more condition has to be true. Not only this also has to be true, meaning we'll find the distance from the player and we will see is that distance greater than the shooting range. And if that is also true, then we will go and move towards the player. So the enemy only moves towards the player when the player is in this area. When it is in this area, it does not move. So let's see if this works or not. So right now nothing is happening because we are outside the line of sight. When we are in the line of sight, it will start following, but when we are in the shooting range, it stops following. And inside the shooting range, I can move as much as I want, but nothing happens. But when I'm outside and I'm in the line of sight, the enemy starts following the player. So let's make a super unit out of both of them, and then we will be good to go. So the first one will be called is player in line of sight. And then let me just copy all of this, cut it, and then go inside here and paste it here. Now for the control input, click on plus, double space here, then you'll find a control input, just put it here. For the output, we need two control input. The first one will be called yes, and the second one will be called no. Doing that, just take the true on yes and false on no. So after doing this, basically we made a super unit that just asks a question. Is the player in the line of sight? If that is true, meaning yes, then we will go to the next thing. Let's do the same for this as well. So now we have made a super unit that just asks, is the player outside shooting range? So first of all, we'll just ask, is the player inside line of sight? Yes. Then we'll ask, is the player outside shooting range? Yes. If both of these condition is true, then we will move towards the player. So let me show you one last time how that works. So now our enemy just follows the player and stops at a certain distance. Now let's make it shoot bullet whenever it stops at this distance. So if we are inside the line of sight and we are not outside the shooting range, meaning we are in here, then we will instantiate a bullet. So there is something called GameObject.instantiate with an origin, position and rotation. Take that one. For the origin, we need a reference to our bullet. Let's do this and write bullet. It will be a type of game object. And then for the position, we need a reference to our shoot position. So let's write bullet spawn. bullet spawn, it will also be a game object and it will be our shoot position. So for our bullet, we need to drag and drop our bullet. So I have already made a bullet here in my project. So I already have both of the bullet. One is a normal bullet that just shoots itself towards the player, and another one, it just follows the player around. That is all it is. So for the bullet, let me show you the flow, how it is. So here I have a small script which basically finds the player and shows the direction of the player, and then shoot itself, meaning the bullet will just start moving towards that direction. Essentially, we will have a bullet that goes at a certain direction and keeps on going at a certain direction, and that will be towards the player. So it works like that. If you want to know how that works, then you can ask me in the Discord. There will be a link in the description down below. So we have that bullet. Let me just put it here in the bullet section and we are good to go. So let's just do this. And for our origin, that will be our bullet. For our position, that will be our bullet spawn dot transform dot position. So transform. And for the rotation, we want no rotation. That means quaternion dot identity. So after doing this, it should start shooting bullet. So let's see if that works or not. As you can see, it is shooting bullet, but it's shooting too many bullets at once, which is not what we want. So we want to shoot bullet with a gradual amount of fire rate. For that, what I need to do is here, let's add two variables. One will be called fire rate. It will be a float, and let's put the fire rate as 1, and the other one will be called next fire time. And let's also make it a float, but we don't need to change the value. So now, before shooting the bullet, let me just first of all bring it about here. So before shooting the bullet, we have to compare our next fire time with our time. And let's compare it. If our time is greater or equal to our next fire time, if that is true, then we will shoot the bullet. So let's just bring it here and then put. So if this condition is true, then we will shoot the bullet. So after doing this, what we should do is basically make a duplicate of this time, and we will add this time with our fire rate and put it inside our next fire time. So let me just add these two values first of all. So now what is happening here is that, let's say whenever we start shooting the bullet, our next fire time will be 0 and this, let's say, will be 1. So now this is greater than this, which is true. So we'll shoot a bullet, and after that this is 1 and this is also 1. So 1 plus 1 will be 2, and our next fire time will be now 2. And now next fire time is 2. So because this is 1, it has to wait like 1 second to be 2, and once it is 2, again, once this is greater than this, then this will be true again, and here we will shoot a bullet. Now this is 2 plus 1 will be 3, and this next fire time will be 3, and because now next fire time is 3 but this guy is 2, so it has to wait 1 second again to be greater or equal to 3. Once it's true, again shoot the bullet and again do the same thing, essentially giving us a bullet that we shoot according to our fire rate. If I put it as 2, then it will shoot 1 bullet every 2 seconds. If I put it as 1, it will shoot 1 bullet every 1 second. So let's see if that works or not. And it works perfectly, which is great. So let's make a super unit out of it, and we have a actually fully working enemy AI. So once we do that, let's rename this to shoot towards player, and then just put it here. So essentially our whole enemy AI is done. So our enemy is almost done. Now let's make it flip towards the player. How we will do that is we will take the X value of the position of our player and the X value of the position of our enemy, and then we will compare them. Meaning if the X value of the player is less than the enemy's, that means it's on the left, and if it is more than the X value of the enemy, then it is on the right, and according to that we will flip towards that direction. Now to flip, first of all we need something called a facing left. It will be a type of boolean, and let's keep it as true because normally our enemy will be facing left. So now what I need to do is I need to take the position of my player on the x-axis. Now we have the transform.position, but we want only the x-axis, so go here and in vector 3 just scroll down and you'll find x get. So this is what we want, and for the player just make a duplicate of this, and this is the player's position. So let me just bring it a little bit down here. Now we will compare these two. So first of all, let's start by making our player on the right side. Okay, so if the player's position on the x-axis is greater, so we have this greater, then our position on the x-axis, essentially meaning the player is on the right side, and so we have an and we are facing left, then we will flip. So for now just remember that. Now let's do the same thing for our left side as well. So for that I just need to make a little bit of changes here. So let's take the position of our player on the x-axis, put it here, and take our position on the x-axis as well. Again, the same question, if the position of my player on the x-axis is this time less than position on the x-axis of the enemy, meaning the player is on the left side, and so let's have an and again. So and, but this time we are not facing left, we are actually facing right. So to make that we have to take the facing left, then right not equal to, you'll find that, and it will say not equal to what. So the what will be our bool, literal, and just check it, meaning not equal to true. If facing left is not true, that means we are facing right. So let's bring it here. So if either of these conditions, meaning either this or this, so if either of this condition will be true, then I want to flip. So for that what I need to do is I need to write an or. So or, and bring it here. Now if either of these conditions are true, meaning let's have a branch, and from the true, then we will basically flip the player, and we will flip the player by writing transform.rotate, and we will rotate our player on the y-axis by 180. And now we are rotated, and after we have rotated, I just want to change my facing right. So if it was true, meaning we were facing left, then I want it to be false, meaning we are now facing right. And if it was false, meaning we are right, facing right, then I want it to be 2 so that it will be facing left. So just make that right facing left. You'll find a set facing left value, and now take our facing left, which is a get value here, make a duplicate of this, and then negate it, negate. It'll basically make a negative of whatever this is, and then put it here. This works like a trigger. So every time we flip, basically we will, so every time, let's say for example right now, let's say the player is right here, right? So what's gonna happen is player's position on the x-axis is greater than our position. This is true, as well as we are actually facing left. That is also true. So if this both condition is true, right, here what will happen, we will flip. So to flip, we will just rotate on the y-axis like this, and after that we will say that yes, we have flipped. That means now facing left was true first of all, now it will be false. And the same happens when I go here. Again, it will see that this is true now, right? Our player's position on the x-axis is less than our position, as well as we are facing right, meaning facing right is not equal to true. That is it. That means if that is true, then we will again flip 0, we have flipped, and facing left will also be negative, so meaning it will be true. So that is exactly how it works. So to make it work, just make a duplicate of this update function, put it here, and then put it here. Now as you can see, nothing is happening. Now as you can see, it flips towards the player, which is awesome. So that is it. You could make super unit out of these values and make it more compact and easy to understand, but I'm not going to do this because you can do it yourself. So with that said, thank you for watching. I hope you liked the video. Smash the like button, hit subscribe, and share it. If anyone wants to know how to make this kind of an enemy, please share it anywhere you like. With that said, again, thank you for watching. Have a great day. Bye bye.